What you're about to witness will challenge everything you believe about the bond between humans and wild animals. In the mountains of Colorado, a dying veteran received a visitor that left wildlife experts speechless. When they discovered the incredible story behind these nightly visits, it proved that some connections transcend all natural boundaries. Meet Captain Marcus Rivera, a 58-year-old former Army Ranger who spent 3 tours in Afghanistan before retiring to a secluded cabin in the Rocky Mountains near Aspen. After losing his leg to an IED explosion in 2018, Marcus chose isolation over the bustling military hospitals and crowded VA centers. His modest log cabin sat at 9,000 feet elevation, surrounded by dense pine forests and accessible only by a winding dirt road that most locals avoided during winter months. Marcus had built this retreat as his sanctuary, a place where the constant noise in his head could finally quiet down. The cabin featured large windows facing the wilderness, a stone fireplace that crackled through cold mountain nights, and a wraparound porch where he spent hours watching elk graze in the meadows below. His only companions were the mountains themselves and the occasional black bear that wandered through his property. The veteran's peaceful solitude was shattered 6 months ago, when doctors at Denver General delivered devastating news. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, they said, with perhaps 3 to 6 months remaining. Marcus refused chemotherapy, choosing instead to spend his final days in the place that had given him the only peace he'd known since returning from war. He contacted no family, made no arrangements, simply returned to his mountain sanctuary to face the end on his own terms. But Marcus wasn't prepared for what would happen next. On a crisp October evening, as golden aspen leaves danced in the wind and the first snow dusted the peaks, something extraordinary occurred. Through his bedroom window, Marcus glimpsed a shadow moving across the moonlit clearing. At first, he dismissed it as another deer or elk passing through. But when he looked closer, his breath caught in his throat. A full-grown mountain lion sat perfectly still on his porch, amber eyes fixed directly on the window where Marcus lay. The massive cat showed no signs of aggression, no intention of hunting or territorial display. Instead, she simply sat there, as if waiting for something, or someone. In 30 years of military service and 5 years living in these mountains, Marcus had never witnessed such behavior from one of nature's most elusive predators. Marcus had arrived in these Colorado mountains carrying more than just physical wounds from his military service. The explosion that claimed his leg had also taken 3 of his closest brothers in arms, leaving him with survivor's guilt that no amount of therapy seemed to heal. The VA hospitals felt suffocating, filled with well-meaning staff who couldn't understand the weight he carried. His ex-wife Jennifer had tried to help, but the nightmares and angry outbursts eventually drove her away, along with any hope of reconciling with his teenage daughter Emma. The cabin had been Marcus's grandfather's hunting lodge, abandoned for decades before Marcus inherited it. He spent 2 years renovating the structure with his own hands, finding purpose in the physical labor that quieted his restless mind. Every board he replaced, every window he installed, represented another step away from the chaos of his previous life. The work was methodical, therapeutic, giving structure to days that otherwise felt meaningless. Living at this altitude meant dealing with harsh winters that could last 6 months, summers that lasted barely 3, and wildlife that considered his property part of their natural territory. Marcus had learned to coexist with the ecosystem around him, respecting the boundaries that kept both him and the animals safe. He stored his food properly, never fed the wildlife, and maintained enough distance to observe without interfering. The veteran's daily routine had become as predictable as the mountain weather patterns. He woke before dawn, made coffee on his wood-burning stove, and spent the morning hours reading military history books or working on small carpentry projects. Afternoons were reserved for physical therapy exercises designed to maintain what mobility remained in his damaged leg. Evenings found him on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the sun disappear behind the Continental Divide. His closest neighbor lived 12 miles down the mountain, and the nearest town of Marble was a 40-minute drive on good days. During winter storms, Marcus could be completely cut off from civilization for weeks at a time. He preferred it that way, having stocked enough supplies to last through any emergency. The isolation that might drive others to madness had become his refuge, the only place where he could exist without pretending to be someone he no longer recognized. The mountain lion's appearance that October night marked the beginning of behavior that defied every established principle of wildlife biology. Mountain lions are solitary, territorial predators that actively avoid human contact, especially around dwellings where unfamiliar scents and sounds create stress. Yet this female cat, weighing approximately 120 pounds with distinctive dark markings around her ears, began returning to Marcus's porch with clockwork regularity. Every evening at precisely 8:30 p.m., she would emerge from the tree line and position herself in the exact same spot on the wooden deck. The cat never approached the windows or doors, never showed interest in exploring the cabin's perimeter, and never displayed any of the restless pacing typical of stressed or confused wildlife. Instead, she would settle into a sphinx-like position, front paws crossed elegantly, and simply observe the interior of the cabin through the large picture window. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Marcus initially assumed the visits were coincidental, perhaps related to a nearby food source or territorial patrol route. Mountain lions typically cover territories spanning 50 to 150 square miles, rarely lingering in any single location unless actively hunting or protecting cubs. But this cat's behavior suggested neither hunting nor territorial marking. She made no attempts to scent mark the area, showed no interest in the small game that frequently crossed the property, and displayed none of the alert wariness that characterizes wild predators in unfamiliar territory. The most unsettling aspect of these encounters was the direct eye contact. Wild mountain lions instinctively avoid prolonged eye contact with humans, interpreting sustained gazes as aggressive challenges. Yet this cat would look directly through the window, maintaining visual connection with Marcus for extended periods without any signs of agitation or threat assessment. Her amber eyes held an intensity that seemed almost purposeful, as if she were trying to communicate something beyond the scope of normal animal behavior. As the visits continued night after night, Marcus began documenting the encounters in a journal he kept beside his bed. The cat's arrival time never varied by more than 5 minutes. Her departure was equally predictable, occurring around 10:15 p.m. when she would rise gracefully, cast one final look toward the window, and disappear into the darkness as silently as she had arrived. Weather conditions seemed irrelevant to her schedule. She appeared during snowstorms, clear nights, and everything in between, suggesting a motivation that transcended basic survival instincts. Driven by military discipline and growing curiosity, Marcus began treating the mountain lion's visits like an intelligence operation. He set up a detailed observation log, recording weather conditions, exact arrival and departure times, the cat's physical condition, and any behavioral variations. His training had taught him that patterns revealed truth, and this situation demanded the same methodical approach he'd used in combat zones. Using an old pair of military-grade binoculars, Marcus studied the cat's movements with tactical precision. He noted that she always approached from the northwest, following what appeared to be a game trail that wound through a grove of ancient blue spruce trees. Her gait showed no signs of injury or illness, ruling out the possibility that she was seeking shelter due to physical distress. The cat's coat appeared healthy and well-maintained, indicating successful hunting and normal grooming behaviors away from his property. Marcus installed a motion-activated trail camera near the tree line, hoping to capture footage that might reveal additional context about the cat's behavior. The resulting images only deepened the mystery. The camera showed the mountain lion arriving alone each evening, but occasionally captured her pausing at the forest edge for several minutes before approaching the cabin, as if gathering courage or waiting for some unseen signal. What struck Marcus most profoundly was the cat's apparent comfort level around human infrastructure. Mountain lions typically exhibit extreme stress responses to artificial lights, mechanical sounds, and human scents. Yet this cat seemed completely unaffected by the cabin's generator humming, the propane heater cycling on and off, and the bright porch light that Marcus kept illuminated each evening.
She would even remain calm when he moved around inside the cabin, tracking his movements with her eyes, but showing no inclination to flee.
During the third week of visits, Marcus made a discovery that sent chills down his spine. While reviewing trail camera footage, he noticed something extraordinary in the cat's eyes when she looked directly at the camera lens. There was recognition there, an intelligence that seemed to acknowledge not just his presence, but his identity. This wasn't random wildlife behavior or territorial curiosity. This mountain lion knew exactly who lived in this cabin, and for reasons Marcus couldn't yet fathom, she had chosen to seek him out specifically. The veteran's cancer symptoms were worsening daily, but these mysterious visits had become the focal point of his remaining time, providing purpose and intrigue during what should have been his final lonely months. Recognizing that he needed professional insight into this unprecedented behavior, Marcus reached out to Dr. Elena Vasquez, a wildlife biologist specializing in large carnivore behavior at Colorado State University. Dr. Vasquez had spent 15 years studying mountain lion populations throughout the Rocky Mountain region and had published extensively on predator-human interactions. When Marcus described the situation over the phone, her initial response was polite skepticism mixed with professional concern. Mountain lions maintaining regular contact with humans violated every principle in Dr. Vasquez's research. These apex predators evolved to avoid human contact as a survival mechanism, with documented cases of cats abandoning prime hunting territories after single encounters with people. The idea of one returning nightly to observe a human dwelling challenged decades of established behavioral science. However, Marcus's military background and methodical documentation impressed her enough to warrant a field investigation. Dr. Vasquez arrived at the mountain cabin on a cold November afternoon, bringing sophisticated monitoring equipment, including infrared cameras, audio recording devices, and motion sensors designed for wildlife research. Her plan was to spend 3 nights documenting the encounters, expecting to find logical explanations for what Marcus interpreted as unusual behavior. Perhaps the cat was sick, displaced by territorial disputes, or attracted to some unidentified food source around the property. That first evening, as 8:30 p.m. approached, Dr. Vasquez positioned herself at the cabin's side window with night vision equipment and data collection tablets. Marcus had warned her about the punctuality, but she remained skeptical until the exact moment the mountain lion emerged from the tree line. The biologist watched in stunned silence as the cat approached the porch with confident, unhurried steps and assumed her familiar position directly facing the main window. What amazed Dr. Vasquez most was the cat's complete lack of stress indicators. Her ears remained forward and relaxed, her tail showed no signs of agitation, and her breathing appeared calm and steady. These were not the behaviors of a confused or desperate animal, but rather those of a creature engaged in purposeful, deliberate action. When the mountain lion made direct eye contact with Marcus through the window, Dr. Vasquez observed something she had never witnessed in wild cats, what appeared to be intentional communication. Over the following 2 nights, Dr. Vasquez documented the same precise routine, timing, and behavioral patterns that Marcus had recorded. Her professional skepticism transformed into scientific fascination as she realized she was witnessing something that would challenge everything the scientific community understood about mountain lion cognition and social behavior. Dr. Vasquez understood that extraordinary behavior required extraordinary investigation. She suggested exploring Marcus's military history, hypothesizing that some past encounter might explain the mountain lion's unusual attachment. Initially reluctant to revisit painful memories, Marcus eventually agreed to share details about his deployments, particularly his time in Afghanistan's mountainous regions where wildlife encounters were not uncommon.
The breakthrough came when Marcus mentioned his final deployment in 2017 to a remote forward operating base near the Pakistan border. His unit had been tasked with training Afghan National Army soldiers in high-altitude combat operations, a mission that took them into some of the most isolated terrain in the Hindu Kush Mountains. On the third day of their patrol, Marcus recalled encountering something that had haunted him ever since. His squad had been investigating reports of Taliban activity in a valley known locally for its wildlife, including the endangered snow leopards that occasionally descended from higher elevations. On the third day of their patrol, they discovered evidence of illegal wildlife trafficking. Crude cages, tranquilizer equipment, and signs of recent animal capture. The poachers had fled, but they left behind a young mountain cat that had been severely injured during the capture attempt.
The animal was barely alive, suffering from infected wounds and severe dehydration. Marcus's medic training kicked in as he assessed the situation. Military protocol dictated that they should continue their mission and report the wildlife crime to appropriate authorities later. But something about the cat's eyes, the way she looked at him despite her obvious pain, made Marcus make a decision that would haunt and define him. Against direct orders and risking court-martial charges, Marcus spent 2 days caring for the injured cat. He used his medical supplies to clean her wounds, forced her to drink water mixed with electrolyte packets from his MREs, and created shelter using his own gear. His squad members thought he had lost his mind, arguing that saving one animal wasn't worth compromising their mission or risking their lives in hostile territory. On the second night, Marcus sat guard while the cat slowly regained strength. Despite her wild nature, she seemed to understand that he was helping her. When Taliban fighters approached their position at dawn, Marcus made the agonizing decision to carry the cat to safety rather than abandon her, a choice that resulted in the IED explosion that claimed his leg and killed 3 of his brothers. The cat had escaped during the chaos, disappearing into the mountains while Marcus fought for his own survival. Dr. Vasquez listened to Marcus's account with growing amazement, but the timeline presented a significant challenge to her emerging theory. The injured cat Marcus had rescued in Afghanistan would have been a snow leopard, a completely different species from the mountain lion visiting his Colorado cabin. Moreover, the geographical distance between the Hindu Kush Mountains and the Colorado Rockies made any direct connection seemingly impossible. However, Dr. Vasquez's scientific training had taught her that nature often defies human assumptions. She proposed a theory that initially seemed far-fetched, but gained credibility as they explored the details. What if the cat Marcus had saved was pregnant? Snow leopards typically give birth to 2 to 3 cubs, and the stress of capture and injury could have triggered premature labor. If the mother had given birth shortly after Marcus rescued her, those cubs would have imprinted on his scent and presence during their most vulnerable hours. The biologist explained that animal imprinting creates neurological pathways that can influence behavior for an entire lifetime. Cubs exposed to human scent and care during their first weeks often retain that memory permanently, sometimes seeking out similar encounters throughout their lives. But this still didn't explain how a snow leopard cub from Afghanistan could become a mountain lion in Colorado. Marcus suddenly remembered a detail that changed everything. During his medical evacuation from Afghanistan, he had been transferred through Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where the military maintained a wildlife rehabilitation facility for injured animals in combat zones. He vaguely recalled overhearing conversations about relocating wildlife to appropriate habitats worldwide. The facility partnered with international conservation programs to ensure injured animals receive proper care and placement. Dr. Vasquez immediately contacted the Department of Defense's Environmental Compliance Office, which maintained records of all wildlife relocations from military zones. After hours of navigating bureaucratic channels, they discovered an extraordinary coincidence.
In late 2017, 3 juvenile cats had been transferred from Afghanistan to a wildlife rehabilitation center in Wyoming, where they were later released into the Colorado Rockies as part of a predator population restoration program. The cats had been found orphaned near the same valley where Marcus's unit had operated. DNA analysis conducted during their rehabilitation identified them as hybrids, the rare offspring of a snow leopard mother and mountain lion father. Such crossbreeding was extremely uncommon but not impossible in overlapping territories. One of these hybrids, a female with distinctive ear markings, had been released specifically in the area surrounding Marcus's mountain cabin. The revelation that this mountain lion was likely the daughter of the snow leopard Marcus had saved in Afghanistan transformed his final months from lonely isolation into something approaching miraculous. Dr. Vasquez's research confirmed that the hybrid female possessed genetic memory and scent recognition capabilities that enabled her to identify Marcus even after years.
Years after their initial connection, the cat wasn't just visiting randomly. She was fulfilling an inherited debt of gratitude that transcended species and continents. As Marcus's cancer progressed and his strength diminished, the nightly visits became increasingly meaningful. The mountain lion seemed to sense his deteriorating condition, arriving earlier each evening and staying longer. On particularly difficult nights, when pain medication left him restless and unable to sleep, Marcus would position himself by the window where he could see his faithful guardian maintaining her vigil on the porch. Dr. Vasquez documented these final weeks with both scientific rigor and deep emotional investment. She observed how the cat's behavior adapted to Marcus's declining health, noting that she would sometimes remain on the porch until dawn on nights when his condition seemed most critical. The biologist theorized that the hybrid's enhanced senses could detect chemical changes in Marcus's scent that indicated his approaching death, triggering protective instincts inherited from her mother. Word of this extraordinary relationship spread through the scientific community and eventually reached Marcus's estranged daughter, Emma. After 3 years of silence following her parents' divorce, she made the difficult journey to her father's mountain retreat. The reunion was tentative and emotional, but the presence of the mountain lion seemed to facilitate conversations that might otherwise have remained impossible. Emma stayed for Marcus's final 2 weeks, witnessing firsthand the profound bond between her father and his unlikely companion. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you're enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. On Marcus's last night, the mountain lion broke her established routine for the first time. Instead of maintaining her usual distance on the porch, she approached the cabin door and lay down directly against it, as if standing guard over his transition. She remained there through the night, and when hospice workers arrived the following morning to confirm Marcus's peaceful passing, they found her still maintaining her protective position. The cat disappeared into the wilderness after Marcus's death, but Dr. Vasquez occasionally receives reports from local residents of a distinctive mountain lion with dark ear markings observing the cabin from the forest edge. Emma has decided to preserve her father's sanctuary as a wildlife research station, ensuring that this remarkable story of interspecies loyalty continues to inspire future generations of scientists and conservationists who believe in the power of compassion to transcend all natural boundaries. 3 months after Marcus's funeral, Emma Rivera Chin returned to the mountain cabin to begin converting it into the wildlife research station she had promised to establish in her father's memory. The property had remained untouched since his death, with Dr. Vasquez occasionally checking the trail cameras that continued to monitor the area. Emma expected to find the place exactly as her father had left it, but she was unprepared for what awaited her arrival. As her SUV navigated the final bend in the mountain road, Emma noticed fresh tracks in the snow leading to and from the cabin's front porch. The distinctive large paw prints could only belong to one animal, and her heart raced with the possibility that her father's mysterious companion had returned.
She parked quietly and approached the cabin with reverent caution, unsure of what she might encounter. The mountain lion was there, positioned in her familiar spot on the wooden deck. But she was not alone. Two smaller forms huddled close to her body, tiny cubs that couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. The mother cat's amber eyes tracked Emma's approach with calm assessment rather than alarm, as if she had been expecting this reunion. The cubs, still blind and helpless, nestled against her mother's warmth while she maintained her protective vigil over the property. Emma realized she was witnessing something extraordinary beyond even her father's original experience. The mountain lion had chosen Marcus's cabin as her denning site, the place where she felt safest bringing new life into the world. This decision represented the ultimate expression of trust, as mother cats typically select the most secure and hidden locations possible for their vulnerable offspring. That she had chosen the cabin where Marcus lived and died suggested a bond that extended beyond gratitude into something approaching reverence. Dr. Vasquez arrived within hours of Emma's phone call, bringing specialized equipment to document this unprecedented development. The biologist explained that mountain lion mothers typically move their cubs to new locations every few days to avoid predators, but this mother had established a permanent nursery on Marcus's porch. She was teaching her offspring that this place represented safety and protection, ensuring that future generations would remember the sanctuary that Marcus had unknowingly provided.
The cubs thrived under their mother's care and the indirect protection of the research station that Emma was establishing. As they grew stronger and more mobile, they began exploring the property under their mother's watchful supervision, learning to navigate the same trails and territories that their grandmother had once known in distant Afghanistan. The legacy of Marcus's compassion had created a lineage of trust that would continue for generations, proving that kindness, once given freely, can echo across time and species in ways that transform the natural world forever. Today, the Marcus Rivera Wildlife Research Station stands as a testament to the extraordinary power of compassion across species boundaries. Dr. Vasquez continues her groundbreaking research on human-wildlife bonds, with the hybrid mountain lion family serving as her primary subjects. The mother cat, now officially designated as Nala in honor of her Afghan heritage, has raised 3 generations of cubs on the property, each inheriting their family's unique trust in human presence. Emma has documented remarkable behaviors that challenge everything scientists thought they knew about wild predators' social structures. The cubs learn not only hunting and survival skills from their mother, but also the ability to distinguish between threatening and protective human presences. This learned behavior represents an evolutionary adaptation that could reshape how we understand wildlife conservation and coexistence. Visitors from around the world now journey to this remote Colorado mountain to witness what many consider the most important interspecies relationship study of the 21st century. The research station has become a beacon of hope for conservationists working in conflict zones, proving that even in humanity's darkest moments, acts of kindness can create lasting positive change that ripples through generations. Marcus Rivera never lived to see the full impact of his decision to save an injured cat in a war-torn valley, but his legacy continues to grow with each new cub born on his mountain sanctuary. The story reminds us that compassion knows no boundaries of geography, species, or time, and that sometimes the smallest acts of mercy can change the world in ways we never imagined possible. If this incredible true story of loyalty, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and wildlife has moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories that prove miracles happen when we choose kindness over indifference. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that love truly can transcend all boundaries. And remember that your own acts of compassion might be creating legacies you'll never even know about.